What's up, college football fans? This is the Nitro College Football Show. My name's Burl,
And my name's Streit.
and tonight we are talking about the SEC and previewing what the SEC is going to look like in the 2025 season. Before we dive in, we just want to say thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, like it, and let's talk some college football. I guess before we cover the SEC outlook, the AP Top 25 first poll launched this week. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, you got Texas at number one. So number one in the coaches poll, now number one in the AP. First time in Texas school history that they are the preseason number one in the AP poll. A stat which I kind of found a little crazy because you think of Texas, you think of all this history, all this stupid conversation about who's a blue blood and who's not, and Texas is in there. It's just crazy to think that a Texas team that lost a lot last year and has got a new quarterback, granted he's got all the expectation in the world on him, they've got them at number one ahead of the defending champion who beat them last year and a Penn State squad that's got a lot coming back. So we'll see what happens with Texas at number one.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked that Penn State honestly wasn't number one because they have the most people coming back and they have they're rock solid at quarterback, most important position on the field. And I guess they're just thinking that Manning's going to come in and just set the world on fire and win the Heisman 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a talent thing, right? I think they look at the Texas pedigree and they look at the failures of James Franklin to be able to beat top 10 teams over his tenure there at Penn State. And we're going to find out real quick, right? Texas and Ohio State play week one. So whether you look at the coaches poll where it's a 1-2 matchup or you look here in the AP poll, it's a 1-3. One of those schools is going to win that game and be number one in week two. And one of those teams is going to lose and not be number one in week two.
Yeah, they might fall to 3.
Right.
But yeah, so Ohio State was there at number 3, followed by Clemson, and then the SEC had a very strong representation. Obviously, Texas is number 1, Georgia's up there, Alabama number 8, LSU 9, and yeah, the SEC is definitely representing well.
Yeah, the old adage SEC and Big Ten ruling the world. 13 of the top 20 are SEC and Big Ten schools, which is not surprising. It's actually surprising that there's that few, really, because you've got Ole Miss and Tennessee at 21 and 24 respectively. So in other polls they were higher. Those were two of the biggest droppers in this poll compared to the coaches poll. Ole Miss was 15 in the coaches poll, and Tennessee was 18. So those are two schools that dropped. So it wouldn't have surprised me if there were more than there are, but definitely those two conferences are kind of ruling the land. You've got Boise State's the only group of 5 school. They're down at 25. You figure the voters got to the end of their poll and were like, well, we got to put somebody in, Yeah. And the biggest surprise I think on here was a team that was unranked in the coaches poll, and that's Oklahoma. They were up at 18. So that's pretty lofty. That's high expectations for John Mateer and Jaden Ott and Brent Venables' team. So we'll see how that plays out in the season.
Yeah, so I would say Texas and Oklahoma are 2 of the teams that I would say, and I use this very loosely, set up for failure with this poll, because Texas at number 1, they've got the target on their back. I don't think there's been a team in the playoff era, take it from poll to poll, number 1 all the way through. Could fact check me on that, y'all, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And then with Oklahoma, I mean, they were god awful last year and they didn't really change that much. And their recruiting still hasn't been good. So I'm not sold on the hype. I know they're 18 and that's not much hype, but for them compared to where they were last year, that's a lot.
Yeah. I think the one thing this poll says is we are basing these teams what we think their talent is, not based on their schedule and what we think they're going to finish, because Oklahoma and Florida have ridiculously hard schedules. And if they win, if they pull upsets or they win out, they'll easily be higher in the poll, even over some teams that may have less losses. So I think this is just based on what they think right now.
Yeah, just not sure about the talent there at Oklahoma.
Yep, we will see, because they certainly have the gauntlet, and we'll get to them a little bit later tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let us know what you think. What surprises you most about the preseason poll? Let us know in the comments. Hit us up on X. Who do you think is overrated, underrated going into week 1? We'd love to hear from you. Okay, let's jump into the main event here. SEC season preview. So SEC comes in 2025 season, as usual, probably one of the deepest conferences in college football. Tough schedules, high expectations across the board, tons of teams ranked in the top 25. A lot of interesting themes this year. There's some quarterback transitions at big programs like Texas and Georgia and Alabama. A lot of defenses having to reload, and there's just some brutal schedules in the SEC, which you mentioned earlier. So what are some things you're looking for?
I think another trend you're going to see is coaches on the hot seat. Last year we didn't have anybody get fired in the SEC, which is a rare thing this day and age. I could honestly see 3 coaches at least getting fired this season in the SEC. There are definitely 3 seats that are very, very hot, and there could be a couple more depending on how things shake out. But we're going to cover everybody in the SEC here tonight, with the exception of Georgia. Next week will be an entire show dedicated to Georgia, so we will go into Georgia's full schedule and everything next week. But we're going to go team by team, and we're going to start right here at the top. We're going to do these alphabetically, so there's no bias, there's no prediction necessarily of the finish here. We're just doing them as they come in the alphabet. So we'll start out at Alabama. High expectations for Alabama this year, and I think rightfully warranted, right? This is the second year under DeBoer, 1 year removed from Saban, and it looks like Alabama is going to be one of the deepest teams in the country, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, getting back to what they were known for, not being able to be pushed around by smaller teams. I think that's what's in store for Alabama this year.
Absolutely. And look for their offense to be much better than it was last year. They've already named Ty Simpson the starter, and you've got Ryan Williams coming back, and he's 18 now. So I don't know if we'll hear about that a lot this season like we did last year. At running back, Jam Miller, he's solid, and just a really tough defense. I mean, Alabama still has, I think they were number 2 in the blue chip ratio scale this year behind Ohio State. And actually, they were probably tied. I think they were both 89% blue chips.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. I think an underrated thing for Alabama this year was Ryan Grubb coming over to be the OC. Obviously, he was there with DeBoer at Washington a year apart. They had this year where they had Jalen Milroe. He didn't really fit into the system that DeBoer liked to run. Now that Grubb is there, Milroe is talented, but he's off to the NFL. You've got Ty Simpson, former 5-star player, and some people like to joke on him that he's stuck around and he's now a 4th-year player. But there's been lots of guys in recent years who didn't fit well with systems. But the word is that he is fitting better in this system. So he's not going to be the running attack, obviously, that Milroe was, but maybe he's a guy who fits better in what DeBoer wants to do. DeBoer really leaned heavily on those receivers that he had up there in Washington that year they made the run at the national championship. And I think Ty Simpson is a quarterback who can do that. Obviously, he's got Ryan Williams, but they've got other star receivers too. Talent is definitely not for lacking on this team. You mentioned Jam Miller. They've also got Richard Young, who's now going to be a sophomore, who was an uber talent out of high school. You pair him, obviously Justice Haynes is gone, but you pair those two, you get back to Alabama running the football, controlling the ball, and playing strong defense. I think you got a team that's going to be right back to where they used to be come into the season.
Yeah, I definitely think Alabama should have the regular Alabama expectations this year, just with how everything is lined up for them. DeBoer is a good coach. I mean, he took Washington to the national title game. That's pretty impressive. But year 2, this is a pretty big year for him. Dare I say make or break year. Could be. It's Alabama. They might have a quick hook. It's always hard following the guy. They're going to be right there in the mix for return to the college football playoff, and they got an early big test against Georgia on September 27th.
Yeah, their schedule is interesting, right? Because before that Georgia game, they have a bye, but their first 3 games, 2 of them in years past would actually be really tough games, right? They open the year playing at Florida State, and then they have Wisconsin at home, and those teams are not what they used to be. Those are still 2 Power 4 teams that have been very successful programs in the past. So that's going to give them a good litmus test of where they are with their offense. They should still be able to win those games, but maybe they get a little challenge and maybe they figure some things out before they have to travel to Athens. Because obviously, I think as Georgia fans, I think Georgia's going to be focused on that game. That game is going to be the most important game on our schedule. I don't know if it necessarily is for Alabama. They've kind of won the series and you can get complacent. So maybe having those early tests will help them be better prepared to walk into Athens. And we'll see where that goes from there. But I think Alabama definitely will be at the top of the conference come end of the year, definitely in the playoff conversation, whether they win the conference or not.
Absolutely. I don't see them going away anytime soon. But this year, like I said, make or break for Kalen DeBoer. I think the big thing to watch is the discipline of the team throughout the year, because that's something last year that you saw kind of wane each week.
Yeah, it wasn't very Alabama-like, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
From everything, now, of course, it could be coach speak, media speak, or whatever. From everything that you've heard around their program this offseason, they've been really buttoning things up, tightening down on workouts, off-season program and everything, and trying to get that mentality back in the building of what they were.
It remains to be seen. So who are some other potential breakout players that you're thinking of?
I mean, they've already got some stars, right? They've got Caden Proctor, who's enormous and is going to be a top 10, top 5 pick in the draft next year. On the defensive side of the ball, they've got a lot of guys who could potentially shoot up draft boards. LT Overton, who was formerly Texas A&M, was one of those top recruits in the country. He went to Texas A&M as part of those crazy recruiting classes they have. He's transferred over. He played, with them last year. And I think he's going to have a big year this year. He had 42 tackles, 2 sacks last year, his first year at Bama. Expect him to step up. Keon Sabb, former Michigan Wolverine at safety, was hurt part of the year last year. He's going to have a big year. And then at linebacker, you've got Deontay Lawson and Q Russell, two really solid guys who are probably going to be all SEC players. Defense, as Alabama standard, loaded, and they're going to make some noise.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about Alabama?
No, I don't think so. We'll see you in Athens on the 27th of September.
Yep. And Tide fans, is Ty Simpson the guy that's going to lead Bama back to the promised land? Let us know how you think he's going to do this year. We'll see. He's certainly got the talent. Okay. Moving on to old Arkansas. So Arkansas Razorbacks. What can you tell us about them?
Well, we talked about coaches on the hot seat, right? Your number one hot seat candidate right there in Arkansas is our old buddy Sam Pittman. Loves to have a cold beer, turn on the jukebox, but the magic may run out this year. They love Sam Pittman. He is an Arkansas guy, but the results have just been up and down. He had a good year, had a not so great year, good year, back and forth. I think what's going to really, really determine this year is the leadership of Taylor Green at quarterback. He had flashes at times last year, but he had a problem with fumbles, and they lost a ton of production on offense. They lost their leading rusher, and they lost their top 7 receivers from last year. So they're replacing a ton, and they're really going to need Taylor Green to step up and lead the team.
Yeah, they have such a tough schedule. 8 projected top 25 teams. I mean, they'll be lucky to get bowl eligible.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think it'll take one and potentially two upsets for Pittman to even survive the first half of the year, because they've got games against Ole Miss, Notre Dame, and Tennessee in the first half of the season. And without winning one or maybe two of those games, I think Pittman's gone by game 6. And the second half of the season, the schedule it's even crazier, because you've got LSU, Texas, and Missouri to close the season. And obviously LSU and Texas are ranked in the top 10, and Missouri was just outside. We'll get to them, but their schedule's relatively easy, so they may be a ranked team as well.
Gosh, they have a hell of a schedule. Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Tennessee, A&M, Auburn, and then you end up with those last 3. That's insane. That's a tough schedule.
Yeah, it's the same in the September 27th game, same day Georgia plays Alabama, is the game that they take on Notre Dame. And that's a huge game for Notre Dame and their chances, because every chance they get to play and beat an SEC school is important for their season. So if they get blown out by Ole Miss, does Pittman survive to that Notre Dame game? I don't know. And if he's not there, what kind of fight do they put up in that game? So just a lot of questions, and a lot of it comes down to winning a couple of games early and keeping Pittman around. I think if they can do that, they certainly have talent, but if they can't and Pittman's gone, I think the second half of the season just could be one of those downhill rolls to disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. So besides Taylor Green, here's a few guys that should be on your radar. Rashad Dabinian, he's their starting running back, and he's looking for a breakout year. Xavier Sorey Jr. at linebacker had 100 tackles last year.
He's a former 5-star who was at Georgia and transferred to Arkansas. So he's one of those guys that could be, a breakout potential, because in the past he was recruited to Georgia and he was part of, one of those recruiting classes right after the national championship. So that's a guy who's definitely got talent, but they're going to need him to step up on that defense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if Pittman gets the axe, does he immediately go to Georgia?
I don't know, but you got to assume if Pittman does get the axe, that Petrino is going to be the at least interim head coach. So that could be another interesting situation.
That would be hilarious. That would be absolutely hilarious. But you know what? I mean, he's a good coach.
Oh, he's a dang good coach, but at least he wouldn't be going to take the job at Arkansas by leaving the Falcons again.
Exactly. You think he gets into another motorcycle wreck?
I still never forgive that man.
Never. That was awful. Who did we get stuck with?
After him, Jim Mora?
The quarterback, Joey.
Joey Harrington?
Joey Harrington, yes. God, mighty. That was terrible times as Falcons fans.
Indeed it was.
Okay, Razorback fans, let us know, can Taylor Green carry this team to a bowl game? Do you think Sam Pittman makes it through the season or even through the first 3 games? Just let us know in the comments.
All right, up next, we've got Auburn, and there are troubles of brewing on the plains. Another place where we've got a coach who's on the hot seat. Hugh Freeze has spent this whole offseason talking more about his golf game than he has about the team that he's going to have on the field this fall.
He's been playing a lot more golf than anything. I mean, that's been like the running joke all off season.
Right. But he did a lot of good work in the portal, right?
He did.
They shored up their quarterback position by getting former 5-star Jackson Arnold to transfer over from Oklahoma. They brought in Eric Singleton, who many thought was the best player, or at least best receiver in the transfer portal from Georgia Tech. They've already got Cam Coleman there at receiver. So with Arnold, Singleton, Coleman, they might have a heck of a passing game. And that's going to be the real question for this team is, can they develop a lethal passing game that doesn't turn the ball over and have stupid errors that cost them games like it did last year?
Yeah, that offensive consistency has to change. It needs to be there because they got some tough road games, Oklahoma and A&M.
Heck, the first game of the season is at Baylor.
Yeah.
And lots of people, even though Baylor wasn't ranked, lots of people are picking Baylor to win the Big 12.
Which is wild to me. But hey, I mean, there's a lot smarter people out there than I am that are picking these things. So
Yeah.
who knows?
I mean, Auburn lost to Cal, so losing to Baylor wouldn't be nothing.
That's true. I mean, they did go 5-7 last year. I think a good season for them this year, and I think we talked about this earlier this year, is if they went just 7-5, I think Hugh Freeze would be doing cartwheels and partying on his golf cart.
Well, because I think that would let them not fire him, and they would not continue to be in this continuous cycle of having to fire and pay coaches to leave, like they've been in for years and years and years.
I want to get one of those jobs where they fire you to leave.
That's the best job in the world, is fired SEC football coach.
Yeah, fired SEC coach. They pay you millions of dollars to go home.
And then you just go do like TV like Dan Mullen did.
Yeah, you don't even have to be good at it, like Dan Mullen was.
So the tough section of their schedule comes at the end of September, where they have Oklahoma and Texas A&M on the road. They get a bye, and then Georgia comes to Jordan-Hare. Now, they are lucky that they get the bye, where Georgia is going to have their Alabama game and have to play that week before. So maybe that's an opportunity for an upset. Jordan-Hare is a tough place to play, and Georgia coming off a high, if they beat Alabama or whatever, and then I think they play Kentucky. That could be an interesting shot for Auburn to pull an upset there.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a dangerous place to play for anybody. There's ghosts on that field. There just are. Crazy things happen over there. But that week after they play Georgia, they play Missouri. So it doesn't really lighten up until...
Well, the next 4 games after that, though, are pretty light, because then they get Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer before Alabama.
I don't know about Vandy, man.
We'll see. We'll see if Vandy's like last year or not.
Pavia power, baby.
Players to look out for. I mean, I think the biggest player to look out for on the Auburn defense is Keldrick Falk. 7 sacks last year. Coming back is going to be one of the best, defensive linemen in the country, I think. Definitely in the SEC. So he's kind of their leader on defense. We've mentioned, the stars they've got on offense. So Auburn has talent. It's just a question of if Hugh Freeze can coach them up and they can not make stupid mistakes, and whether they can navigate that first half of the season.
Yeah. They got to find consistency on offense, and they need to step it up a little bit on defense. If they can be a top 40 defense, then they got a chance. So, yeah, can Auburn do it this year? Can they actually be a plus 500 team this year? Who knows? Are they going to make a bowl game? Auburn fans, let us know. What do you think of Hugh Freeze? Are you excited about Jackson Arnold? What's the big thing you're looking out for this year? Let us know in the comments. And if you made it this far and you like college football as much as we do, subscribe to this channel. It's the best college football content on the web.
All right. So we'll go to Gainesville, Florida. And there's a lot of expectation in the Swamp this year. And it all centers around their quarterback, DJ Lagway. But the real question is he going to make it through the season healthy? Burl, what do you think?
Is he going to make it to the season healthy?
Very true.
Lots of stuff going around right now about ankle injuries and who knows what else. And he is the linchpin to that whole team. If Florida goes as DJ Lagway goes, if he comes in and he stays healthy, he has a chance to be absolutely great.
With the schedule that they have, and with the talent that he has, if he stays healthy and they navigate through 10-2, 100% guarantees them the playoff. 9-3 probably gets them in the playoff with the schedule they have. And if he stays healthy, puts up good numbers, and they win, then all the preseason hype and accolades and everything will come to DJ Lagway. They've got one of the best offensive lines in the country protecting him, with left tackle Austin Barber, center Jake Slaughter. But they have to keep this guy healthy. His numbers were not great last year, even though he made fantastic plays. 56, 57% completion, 12 touchdowns, 9 picks. So he needed work, missed all of spring, and now has missed some here at the beginning of summer. You got to wonder, the talent's there, but they got to keep him healthy and they got to keep him going to build this program and get it back to what they used to be.
Yeah, and that's a brutal schedule. If they are able to go 10-2 this year, DJ Lagway is going to New York.
Absolutely,
like he's gonna be a Heisman finalist. That's just a brutal schedule. Games on the road at LSU and A&M, and then you still got the cocktail party against Georgia every year. And
I mean, between September 13th and October 11th, it's 4 straight preseason ranked teams, but it's number 9, number 10, number 1, and number 19. That's nuts. And that's before you go play Georgia in a couple weeks and then still have Ole Miss and Tennessee late in the season. The schedule makers have done them no favors, and they went out of their way to schedule a game with Miami. And even their scrub game is South Florida. Yes, Long Island. Okay, they'll win that one. But then they have Florida State. And every year is going to be a different Florida State team. Who knows? Maybe this Florida State team recovers and is better. And after they go through this gauntlet of a season, last year, yeah, Florida State was horrible, but maybe they're not horrible. Maybe they're good.
Yeah, they could turn it around. I mean, the bar for being better than last year for Florida State is very low. So they have to be a little bit better. And it's a rivalry game. So you never know what is going to happen in a rivalry game.
Right. And I mean, Billy Napier was on the hot seat early in the year last year. The way that they played for him down the stretch was the reason that he stayed. They had good players. They had a good recruiting class. They've got some good talent, particularly at wide receiver. So you've got Eugene Wilson coming back for his sophomore year. Senior transfer J. Michael Sturdivant from UCLA, who's had a couple of good seasons. Didn't have a great year last year, but was hurt some of the year. And then you have uber talented Vernell Brown coming in as a freshman, number 5 receiver in the class. You pair that up with Jacoby Jackson and Jaden Ball in the backfield. And what they have on the offensive line, this Florida offense could be really, really good for the first time, showing consistency that they haven't had at least since 2020, when Kyle Pitts was there. And what's the quarterback? I can't remember his name.
Kyle Trask.
And Kyle Trask was there, right, in 2020.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they're a much improved team. Billy Napier is probably one of the few coaches that could go to Florida and me as a Georgia fan could feel good about him and kind of pull for him, because he really turned it around last year. You could just tell that locker room was bought in to what he was pitching. And that's the key to any head coach's success. You lose the locker room, you're done. And those guys, they played their tails off for him down the stretch, even with Lagway hurt and all that. So Billy Napier, good guy. Still don't like Florida, but they're going to be pretty good.
Yep, they'll be good, but never forget, Gators wear jean shorts.
Jorts, baby. So if you wear jorts and you're big fans of that, let us know how you feel about Florida going into this year. Are you glad that Billy Napier's still there? I don't know. You tell me. Anyway, let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Okay, next, where are we headed to?
We are headed up to where I will be this weekend, Kentucky. And Kentucky's thing this year is, are they going to be able to save Mark Stoops' job? He's the longest tenured coach in the SEC. Last year was a disaster, despite the fact that they did pull an upset of Ole Miss and they almost beat Georgia. Everything fell apart. Brock Vandagriff experiment didn't work out. He's gone. They're on to another transfer quarterback, which has been the norm there. Zach Calzada, who at one time was at Texas A&M and then it was at Incarnate Word, where he put up crazy numbers, but he feels like he's 100,000 years old. Is he the answer that can get Kentucky back on the right track? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of hot seats, this is a hot seat situation here with Mark Stoops. I don't know too many Kentucky fans personally that actually care for Mark Stoops anymore.
Yeah. I mean, their offense was so bad last year.
How
they were
bad was it?
114th in the country, despite the fact that they had Berrien Brown and Dane Key, who were two of the top receivers in the portal. Berrien Brown went to LSU, Dane Key went to Nebraska. And they had a former 5-star at Vanderbilt at quarterback, and they couldn't figure out anything.
Yeah, that was super disappointing because Brock Vandergriff was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school and had a lot of hype to him. And when he went to Kentucky, there's a lot of hope, and they were like, "Wow, that's actually a move that makes a lot of sense." And if he can go there and fulfill that potential, we thought Kentucky was going to be great last year, and it just did not happen for him. They did lose a lot of really close games. Georgia game is one of those that if they win that game, they probably change their season, but it was just such a disappointing outcome for them.
Yeah. I mean, when things started to really go bad for them last year was that South Carolina game the week before Georgia, actually, where they just had turnovers left and right, and it just became a mess. If you look at their schedule this year, they have Toledo and Eastern Michigan early in the year, but the rest of their games up until November are all against teams that are preseason ranked. And if they drop all of those SEC games, I don't see Stoops surviving to the stretch of the season.
I don't either. If I was a bet man, which sometimes I am, I would take that bet that he wouldn't be there at the end.
All right. Well, Kentucky fans, tell us if you think Kentucky's going to play well and make some noise, or if you're going to be getting ready for basketball season really early this year. Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Nice job. All right, heading on down to the Bayou. Let's talk about some LSU Tigers.
Yeah, is LSU going to have another Heisman Trophy winner? Because they seem to have one every few years. And Garrett Nussmeier in 2022 in the SEC championship game, I watched that dude put on a show against the Georgia defense. Now, their defense couldn't stop anybody, so it didn't matter in the game. But the tools are certainly there. It's a big deal that he came back. But LSU, their defense was still pretty atrocious last year at times. So for LSU, and Garrett Nussmeier in particular, they go and they play at Clemson week 1. They have had trouble winning these opening games. They've lost like 5 or 6 in a row. It's crazy. Especially, they always play these neutral site games and they lose, even when they shouldn't. Can they go to Clemson and win week 1? Because if they can, then that's going to set them up for the season that's going to come. It's going to set up Nussmeier to be a Heisman Trophy candidate, and it's going to set them up with the confidence they're going to need to go through the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure in Baton Rouge this year. I mean, this is probably one of those hot seat situations too for Brian Kelly, because it hasn't really shown a upward trajectory since he's been there.
Part of it's his own doing, because this is the guy who left Notre Dame because he said that you can't win at Notre Dame, you can't make it to a national championship at Notre Dame, and he left and went to LSU, a team who had just won the national championship a couple years before that, and Notre Dame has now made it to the national championship while they have not.
Yeah. So I definitely think it's a hot seat situation for Brian Kelly. And another thing is Harold Perkins gonna make a comeback?
I mean, that's the question, right? When he was a freshman, he looked like one of the best freshmen that we'd seen in the SEC in a long time. And it's been kind of mixed results the last few years, and then he tore his ACL last year. Now, coming back for his senior year, does he return to form? Does he become that star on the defense to lead LSU? They've got some really other good players. Whit Weeks is a great linebacker,
Mm-hmm.
But their defense has been so inconsistent. 2 years ago, when they had Jaden Daniels, they couldn't stop anybody. They had a Heisman Trophy winner, but they couldn't stop anybody. Last year, they still were very, very good on offense. They still had trouble stopping people when they needed to.
Yeah, yeah. And Nussmeier had an interception problem.
That too. So they focused a lot in the portal. They went out and got 3 edge rushers from major programs in the portal. They got Patrick Payton from Florida State, Jack Pyburn from Florida, and Jamari Butler from Nebraska to come in, hopefully help them find some pass rush to help that defense, because they're going to need it just like everybody else. They opened that game at Clemson right into Death Valley East.
Yeah.
If they're going to beat that Clemson team that is a experienced team that has a senior quarterback that has a lot of depth on the defensive side of the ball, they can win that game. Then look out, because they've got Florida 2 weeks after that. They get through those and they get in the meat of that schedule. Ball gets rolling. It could be go Tigers all the way to Atlanta.
What a huge game. I mean, that weekend to start out with, you're going to have Clemson, LSU, Texas, Ohio State. Who else?
You've got three top 10 matchups. The other one is Miami, Notre Dame.
Oh, that's right. Yep. Well, technically top 10 matchup. I'm still not sold on Miami being top 10 team. It's not.
So, LSU fans, what do you think? You think Garrett Nussmeier becomes the 3rd LSU Tiger to win the Heisman in the last 10 years? Let us know in the comments below.
All right. So now we'll head over to the state of Mississippi. We'll talk about the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Jeff Levy's in his 2nd year, and their quarterback Blake Shapen is healthy. They're hoping that their offense is going to be good, but we have questions on whether or not they win a game this year.
Right. 0-8 in the conference last year, and Michael Van Buren looked pretty good at quarterback. They couldn't convince him to stay, so Blake Shapen, who formerly was a starter at Baylor, comes in to take over, and I just took that as a bad sign. Like, he wanted out. He got to play as a freshman there. He put up some good numbers, had some good games. He chose to transfer to LSU and sit. Like, you knew he wasn't going to start at LSU, and he chose to go sit. So to me, that said a lot, right? Out of conference, they've got Arizona State, a 2nd week of the season, and so they've got a tough out of conference game, and of course they play the same gauntlet that most everybody in the SEC is going through. I just don't see a lot of wins on their schedule after the month of September. They open at Southern Miss, which, what are you doing playing at Southern Miss? Side point.
That's a rivalry game, sort technically, but I get what you're saying. But
you don't see us going to play Georgia Southern in Statesboro, do you?
I know, but this is a different situation.
Yeah, but like I said, they've got that Arizona State game, and then Alcorn State and Northern Illinois. But after that, I don't know, man. Maybe Arkansas, November 1st. 1-7 looks very realistic in the SEC for them this year.
Yeah, I mean, they might only win 2 games this year. Seriously,
you hope they beat Alcorn State.
I know that's the one that I feel most confident that they could win. I don't feel confident for them beating Northern Illinois, because we saw Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame last year.
Right.
So definitely not a lot of confidence in the old Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Oh, well, on the flip side, a school that doesn't have quite a tough schedule that I think maybe has a good chance to win a lot of games this year is Missouri. Missouri last year had this super easy schedule, and what they win 9 games last year. This year, I mean, yes, they play Alabama, and yes, they play Texas A&M and Oklahoma and South Carolina, but they don't play Texas, they don't play Georgia, they don't play LSU, they don't play Tennessee, so they've got it kind of set up nicely there for them in the SEC. The question is, how do the transfers that they brought in help them? They brought in Damon Wilson. Surprised everyone at Georgia that Damon Wilson decided to transfer, because I thought he was going to be a heck of a defensive end player for Georgia. 5-star player, and he went to Missouri. And it shocked everybody.
It was shocking.
And then they brought in Bo Pribula. Gosh, I cannot say that name. From Penn State, who was the backup quarterback at Penn State. If you remember, Drew Aller went down. I think it was in the Wisconsin game. Mm-hmm. He came in, played really well, showed some flashes. But when it got to the playoff, he decided to transfer. So he went into the transfer portal and left the team during their playoff run. So it's a question if he can come in and, lead the team. They've got a receiver, Kevin Coleman Jr. from Mississippi State, who had 74 catches, 932 yards last year. So they've got a good transfer receiver. They've got a transfer quarterback. They've got a star on defense. Let's see if they can put it together.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a solid team. As long as Eli Drinkwitz is there, they're going to be solid. He's a coach that you can pull for. He cares about his team and what he's doing. Has a no nonsense kind of attitude about things. I think he was the one that kind of made the term standing on business kind of popular, which is funny. But yeah, so as long as he's there, they're gonna be in it. I think honestly, one of the biggest games for them is going to be that South Carolina game, because that's one of those. If they beat South Carolina, then I think they'll get a lot of respect nationally, just given how well South Carolina finished the year last year.
Yeah, that could be one of those games that kind of decides who's in the upper echelon of the SEC and who kind of falls into the middle, right?
Yeah.
Those are both kind of schools that are viewed as around that same talent level, I guess. And with their schedules, those are, potential 9-3, 8-4, 10-2 type teams. So I think another key game on Missouri's schedule for them is their out-of-conference game against Kansas. Kansas was a weird team last year, right? They started out like 0-6, but then they pulled off 3 straight wins against ranked teams, and they've got the oldest, or at least most experienced, starting quarterback in all of FBS, a guy who's like playing in his 6th year. That's an interesting game because it's the old Kansas-Missouri rivalry. They don't get to play it in basketball anymore, but they hate each other. And that one's could be interesting because if they get that win, it's a rivalry win early in the season. It would help build their confidence. They'd be probably 3-0 heading into South Carolina. So I think that's an important game for them to win.
I think Kansas got some really big transfers too.
Well, they're going to, considering that they had an alumni who donated $300 million to them today, the largest ever single gift to an athletic department.
How much money did that person have that they could just give away $300 million?
I have no idea.
I mean, that's insane. My brain can't even process the large number. I mean, it's just...
You saw the picture I sent to you, right?
Yeah.
Kansas's backfield next year.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams and Arch Manning.
Yeah. Nate Frazier transfers. Oh, that would be terrible. That'd be absolutely terrible.
So yeah, Missouri fans, do you think that game against Kansas is what really is the most important early season turning point for your team? Let us know in the comments below.
All right. Another team that we're going to talk about, Oklahoma. A lot of expectations for them going into this year. Not really sure that they're founded in reality, but they got a couple really good transfers. They got, I think, probably the best quarterback from what everybody's saying, John Mateer. He had great numbers last year at Washington State, and they have high expectations of him this year, although he is dealing with a bit of a scandal at the moment that might cause some distractions. But they got a tough schedule, and they really haven't been, like we were talking about earlier, they really haven't been lighting it up on the recruiting front.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're the only team in the country that can say they play a harder schedule than Florida. Their schedule is ridiculously tough. And when you consider that their out of conference schedule includes Michigan, that just makes it that much harder. So they're going to get that test against Michigan at home week 2. Michigan's going to come in, with all this momentum riding last year. Bryce Underwood, his first road game. We'll see how he does there in Norman. But that's going to be important for them to kind of jumpstart their season. Other than Michigan game, the early part of their schedule is easy because the whole second half, the easiest team on their schedule is Missouri. That's the only unranked team on their schedule during the last 7 games of the year.
That is a brutal schedule. Absolutely brutal. And I think Sharon Moore will actually be coaching in that Michigan game.
Right. He's not suspended. Obviously, Brent Venables, I think he's a good coach. He knows how to coach defense. Their defense was actually good last year. It was their offense that was the problem. They were a top 20 defense last year. They've got 8 starters back. So defense is not going to be the issue. It's offense. And in addition to bringing in Mateer, they brought in Ben Arbuckle, who was John Mateer's OC at Washington State. So that's part of the hype behind Mateer is that, yes, he's coming over, but he's not having to come over and learn a new system. He's with the same offensive coach that he was last year. And getting Jaden Ott to transfer in, who 2 years ago was like 1,100 yards, probably was the best available running back from Cal. He was hurt part of the year last year, so his numbers weren't great. But like I said, 2 years ago, he was fantastic. So you get 2 great offensive players to come in. If they can keep wide receivers healthy, because that's what they couldn't do last year. Last year, their wide receivers were all hurt. Infamously, I think in the Auburn game, they went in with their top 6 receivers out.
Oh, man.
If they can keep their receivers healthy and generate offense, their defense is going to be fine. It's just whether they can hold up those last 7 games of a ridiculously tough schedule.
Yeah, but even though they did get a really good offensive coordinator coming in, that the rest of the team still has to learn that offense. And I just wonder if this is just a situation where you have a head coach that is just better as a coordinator.
Maybe. Or maybe he's a coach much like Kirby Smart, where his talents are suited for one side of the ball, right? And so last year it wasn't that way. He's bringing in a guy who he's handing over the keys to and kind of saying, you know what, you run the offense, I'll run the defense and the decisions overall. Because you got to remember, Venables ran Dabo. He ran the defense for Dabo in all those years at Clemson. So, and he stayed with him. He didn't leave. It took him a long time to leave. So we know he can coach defense. And I think, if it's a gamble, right? It's a gamble putting all your ducks on this one coach and his quarterback to come in.
Yeah. Well, he kind of has to, though, because the great head coaches are CEOs and they hire the best coaches, managers, however you want to equate it, to execute their vision of what they want their football team to do. That's what separated Nick Saban. It's what separates Kirby Smart. It's what, throw Ryan Day in there. I don't care. But that's what the really good coaches do. There's a few out there that can be in the weeds and make the calls, in terms of calling plays and all that. But you're better. The really, really good coaches have the whole organization rowing in the right direction, in the same direction. So it's a big gamble, but I think it's what he had to do. And it's just a natural progression as a head coach. So I hope the best for him, because he is a hell of a defensive coach. And if it does work out, Oklahoma could be scary then, because if you have a rock solid defense, you're going to be in just about every game.
Much like Florida, what do they need to go to make the playoff with this schedule? 9-3. I mean, that's it. You 9-3 with this schedule you're in. You're going to be.
Well, we say that, but it depends on the 12 people picking the teams.
Very true. Very true.
Just
and of course, we say this now. This schedule looks ridiculous, but who knows? Ole Miss, Tennessee could fall apart. Those games may not mean as much as they do right now. So
Texas could fall out of the top 25.
Yeah, that's probably not not with their schedule. We'll get to that.
All right. So Sooner fans, let us know what you think. Are you sold on Brent Venables? Do you think he's the guy to return OU to the promised land? Is John Mateer gonna be the key to this whole transformation? Let us know in the comments. And let's go to Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's going to be a different year for Ole Miss. Last year you had all these high, as we like to call it here on this show, the best defense that money could buy. And it was really, really good with Walter Nolan and Princely Unimalen and Chris Paul Jr. You don't have that same caliber on defense. You've got good players. You've got Suntarine Perkins coming back, 10.5 sacks last year. But you've got a lot to replace. You also don't have Jackson Dart on offense anymore. Austin Simmons, it's interesting because Kiffin is all about his transfer quarterbacks, and he has been. He made it a point that Austin Simmons was his guy, that they weren't taking a transfer. He's unproven. He had a great drive, or great series or two against Georgia last year.
He did. It was a very, very impressive couple of drives. He actually came in and did way better than Jackson Dart did
early in that game.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of faith in Austin Simmons. We know Kiffin can coach, and we know he knows how to coach offense.
Absolutely. He's one of those few coaches that can actually, it's better if he just focuses on the offense.
Yeah. So though he did stay with Simmons as his quarterback and not take transfers, they filled up the receiving room with all transfers. So they went and got 3 guys, proven receivers to fill in that receivers room. They got Harrison Wallace, 46 catches, 720 yards, who came in from Penn State. Deuce Alexander, who had 36 catches for 400 yards, came from Wake Forest. And Deshaun Stripling from Oklahoma State, 52 catches, 880 yards. So you've got 3 receivers who put up decent numbers at big time schools last year coming in to fill up that room around a quarterback who is inexperienced, but has shown flashes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's look at their schedule.
Yeah, the interesting one on their schedule is week 4. They play Tulane, and you're like, Tulane. Well, Tulane is one of those schools that's kind of been mentioned as a potential, group of 5 playoff team. I think that game's really important for Ole Miss because they've got Georgia State, Kentucky, and Arkansas before that. So they've got teams that they should be able to at least out-talent. They still had a good transfer class. They had the number 4 transfer class. They brought in 30 players. They're going to have talent, and they should be able to beat those teams. But then you're going to play Tulane, a motivated group of 5 team who's going to be fighting for that spot. That's an interesting game. You've got LSU the next week.
Don't sleep on Georgia State.
I like Del McGee. I like Branson Robinson.
But Branson Robinson's going to light it up.
Yeah.
I think that game at Kentucky could be very interesting too.
I mean, they lost to Kentucky last year. It's the reason they didn't make the playoff.
Exactly. And it's on the road. We know Kentucky's really hard to beat at home. I agree. That Tulane game, that'll be really interesting because Tulane's been kind of a program on the rise the past few years in the group of 5.
Yeah. They've got Washington State too, which is a group of 5, but it's a 2-team conference this year, sandwiched in between the LSU and Georgia games. So that's interesting, right? That might be a tougher game. Obviously, we know Washington State lost their OC and they lost John Mateer, so that one could be interesting as well.
Yeah, but still, I mean that's a pretty tough stretch of games right there. LSU, Washington State, Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina.
Yeah, indeed it is. And especially with the Georgia game and the Oklahoma game, both on the road, back-to-back weeks.
Exactly.
And you're going to be coming to Athens with a Georgia team that, for whatever reason, the last few times we've been to Oxford has struggled. And when they've come back, we've absolutely torn them apart. And I think Kirby's going to be out for blood a little bit.
It's been whoever's the home team blows out the away team when it's Georgia Ole Miss.
It has.
Yeah, just brutal both ways. But Ole Miss is always an entertaining team to watch. As long as Lane Kiffin's there, it's going to be a fun watch. He's entertaining as hell. Love seeing him on Feinbaum and on Twitter and all that good stuff. So get your popcorn ready, right?
Yeah. Ole Miss fans, do you think Austin Simmons is the quarterback of the future? Do you think Kiffin made the right decision to not look at the transfer portal this year? Let us know what you think.
And speaking of quarterbacks, probably one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I said that weird. Quarterbacks. Probably one of the best quarterbacks in college football is going to be Lenora Sellers at South Carolina. And that is proving to be a huge thing for South Carolina. A lot of expectations for this team, especially after how they ended up last year. They were the team that everybody said got snubbed from the playoffs because they were the hottest team in all of college football. And it was a great story. And honestly, if Lenora Sellers doesn't get hurt during that LSU game, they probably win that game and make the playoffs. Maybe actually make it into the SEC championship.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been, you would have had some weird tiebreakers and stuff going on.
Yeah.
If they would have won that game. So South Carolina obviously they're not the exact same situation as Ohio State, but they've kind of got some sniffings of similarities to Ohio State in that they lose a ton, but they get their best offensive player and their best defensive player back. So they get Lenora Sellers back on offense and they get Dylan Stewart back on defense. So you've got two super uber stars that are going to be top 15 picks in the draft next year. One on offense, one on defense to lead a team that was hot down the stretch, much like Ohio State was. So the question is, can they use all that momentum to replace all that talent they lost? They're 99th in the country in returning production on defense. So you lost TJ Sanders, you lost Kyle Kennard. So they're going to look to some transfers. My favorite transfer that they've got coming in is Demon Clowney, cousin to Jadeveon Clowney. But man, can you imagine if Jadeveon Clowney's name would have been Demon?
Would have been awesome.
Because I think Demon Clowney, he's not as big and crazy as Jadeveon Clowney was, but Jadeveon Clowney was the scariest player that I think I ever saw playing college football.
Absolutely. He absolutely was.
And then you got Edge Brian Thomas coming in as well. So look to those guys to kind of help Dylan Stewart, keep that defense going. And then on the offensive side of the ball, the question is who's going to catch the ball from Lenora Sellers? They lost a lot in the receiving room, and they lost Rocket Sanders in the backfield. Now, the one guy that I look to is Nick Harbor. Absolute physical freak. This is a guy who's like 6'5", 6'6", who is one of the fastest people in the country, is winning track championships in college. If he can put all of those physical skills together, he will be a major target that there's not many people in the country is going to be able to cover.
Yeah, he's a mismatch nightmare.
Also in the backfield, they are waiting word on the eligibility of Utah State transfer Rashul Faison. He hasn't been ruled eligible yet, but they have started to let him practice. And this is a guy who ran for 1,100 yards last year. So if he ends up being eligible, that gives them at least an established running back to go in there, along with Isaiah Augustov, who's transferring in from Colorado, to hopefully build the backfield around Sellers. Now, Sellers is a fantastic player, but I think for them to be successful, he's going to have to really step up his passing production last year. I think he had 17, 18 touchdowns last year, which is not a lot for a player that you're considering one of the best passers in the country. He ran a lot. So
and he only had 2,500 yards passing last year.
So I think a successful year for them is going to see his stats really jump up through the roof.
Yeah, they're going to have to. and one defensive lineman to watch for. This is a great name, Tonka Hemingway.
I don't know what's better, Tonka Hemingway or Demon Clowney.
I mean, they're Demon Clowney, obviously. God, yeah. What if Jadavion Clowney's name was Demon? I mean, that.
So I will say one thing.
That gives me nightmares. That gives Michigan State or Michigan fans nightmares.
I will say this: their schedule sets up. Their first half of their season sets up so nice because their back half is ridiculous. So they open versus Virginia Tech, which Virginia Tech has not been what they were,
very
but
winnable, and it's at home.
Yeah, you got South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky. So get through those 5. Get Sellers really going the offense running before you get to LSU, Oklahoma, Bama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M.
Man,
like if you can get the offense rolling, go into that stretch of 4 games and win 2 of them and get all your momentum, and then you play Clemson at the end of the year and make the playoff. I think that's the goal for South Carolina.
Yeah,
is to get through that tough schedule in the middle of the year at 2-2 in those games. That should be their, that's not, obviously they want to win them all, but realistically, if they want a chance to make the playoff, that's what they've got to do.
Yeah, really tough back end of the schedule. And I think they're actually pretty lucky that they have Vanderbilt at home. I'm not even joking.
They've gone back and forth with Vanderbilt a lot when, obviously with being in the same division.
Yep. So I expect South Carolina to be in the mix, or at least in the conversation near the end of next year, or at least going into that stretch. But yeah, they do not have it easy, especially if Oklahoma can play some offense. So Gamecocks fans, Cox fans, is Lenora Sellers going to be the guy? Is he going to end up in New York, win the Heisman, get South Carolina into the playoffs? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. Up next, we head up to Rocky Top, where they had an absolutely situation that happened this spring with Nico Imaliava leaving to go to UCLA after spring practice. The quarterback situation remains unsettled. Joey Aguilar is now in. Of course, he was a transfer from Appalachian State going to UCLA. He's had some decent numbers in his years at App State. 3,000 yards last year, 23 touchdowns, but 14 picks. That's a lot. And 3,700 yards and 33 touchdowns in 2023. So this is a guy who can put up numbers, but he just got on campus. He didn't get on campus. He wasn't there in the spring. He was at UCLA, expecting to be the starting quarterback there. And I don't think they've actually named him the starter yet, though expectations are that he will. So the biggest question is he going to be able to fill the void and the mess that was left by Nico leaving?
That's the big question. But honestly, probably. I mean, Nico didn't really set the world on fire last year. Granted, they had the SEC's leading rusher, so that's a huge, huge hole to fill. Because that was their bread and butter, was that running game and the pass rush by James Pierce.
Yeah, it was weird. Tennessee last year was a run the ball and play defense team. A Josh Heupel offense that was running the ball and playing defense. Is that not what you had on your bingo card coming into the year with this 5-star quarterback that everybody expected big things out of?
Yeah. So I expect it to be, as far as quarterback production goes, probably similar. Maybe it could be a little bit better just because last year was what it was. And you never know with Josh Heupel. The offense can turn on a dime. Just because it was what it was last year doesn't mean that this year it's not going to be what we're used to seeing from Tennessee.
Yeah, it's always tough, though, when you lose a running back that was as dynamic as Dylan Sampson was. It's going to be tough. They've got a couple of guys who look like the candidates. Deshaun Bishop and Duke transfer Star Thomas are coming in. So if they're going to continue that, one of those guys is going to have to really step up because Sampson was that bell cow. He carried it all the time for them, and he was great. They are also unproven in the receiving room. Chris Brazel is their leading returning receiver. Well, he just got arrested. Traffic violation or something. I'm sure he'll be fine. If not, call the Georgia lawyers. They'll help you out.
Did he just get a ticket?
Probably. But the real expectation there is Mike Matthews. This is a former 5-star guy from Parkview High School. Georgia wanted him, but he ended up going to Tennessee. He's a sophomore this year. He wasn't involved a lot last year, like under 10 catches, but this is a guy who's got the skills, right? And I saw this guy play in high school. He's a fantastic player. So
yeah, so
if Mike Matthews emerges, he's going to be a star because he's in that same receiving recruiting class with Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith.
Right. So this is what I'm talking about with a Josh Heupel offense. They get a guy like this. If he turns out to be the real deal, I mean, we could see that fling it everywhere, crazy wide splits on your receivers offense again, just hitting those seams and scoring long touchdowns.
Right. I think for Tennessee, though, I offense is unsettled. We don't know what it's going to be, but I think their defense is going to be really good again. They've got 7 starters coming back. Now, the big question in Tennessee is Jermod McCoy going to be healthy? Tore his ACL in January, working out postseason. This guy is a first-round pick, if healthy. He's probably one of the best returning defensive players in the country. If he's healthy, if he is what he has been, you got yourself a lockdown corner. You've one side of the field's done. And we know from our experiences at Georgia, if you got one side locked down, that helps clear everybody up. So I think the Tennessee defense will be really strong. And I think that if they can keep, if they play as well as they have and they keep people off the field or keep people from putting up big points, the offense won't have to feel that pressure, especially early in the year, to score like crazy like they have. And that would really help Joey Aguilar come along and get comfortable in the system. They start off with a tough game. They've got Syracuse, week 1. It's not an easy one. Syracuse was a hot team down the stretch now. They lost a lot, and the expectations are not crazy, but they weren't crazy last year. We know Fran Brown can coach. So we're going to know a lot about Tennessee offense in that first game, I think. You're going to see whether it's immediately clicking or if it's still got a ways to go.
Yeah, their early schedule is nothing to sneeze at. Syracuse and Georgia,
right,
within a 3-week stretch.
Look at it this way for Tennessee. They made the playoff last year. They were able to beat Alabama at home, okay? But they lost to Georgia on the road. They get Georgia at home this year, and then they have to go to Alabama. So let's say they flip those games. If they can somehow win that game against Georgia, first, it's going to be Gunnar Stockton's first true SEC game and his first true road game. We know Tennessee has 106,000 and it's loud and it's a tough place to play. Whether Tennessee is the best team in the country or they're playing like crap, that's a tough place to play.
Absolutely. It is. It's an absolutely hostile environment. I know we were talking about toughest places to play earlier this season, and Tennessee is definitely up there. If it's not in your top 3, then you don't know ball, right?
I mean, look at it this way. In the preseason rankings, they only have 4 teams on their preseason schedule that are ranked. Almost everybody in the SEC has at least 5. So their schedule is set up pretty nice.
It is, yeah.
You got to remember last year they lost to Georgia, but they beat Alabama. They lost. Who'd they lose to? They lost to Arkansas last year.
That's right. That's right.
So
and when you look at their schedule, the really big games that you would pinpoint are kind of spaced out pretty nicely.
Yeah, they are. They don't have that that crazy back to back that most teams in the SEC seem to have.
There's not a gauntlet. I mean, the gauntlet for them is from Arkansas, October 11th, then Bama, at Kentucky, Oklahoma. That's the toughest stretch that they have.
Yeah.
And I purposely didn't say Mississippi State.
So, I mean, if anybody is set up to pull an upset here or there and hold serve, they could be back in the playoff. And I don't think Tennessee is as good of a team as they were last year. I just don't. But I think they could be back in the playoff just because their schedule sets up nicely.
Yeah, if that offense comes back to life, absolutely. Because when that offense is cooking, Tennessee's the scariest team that Georgia plays. That I stand by that for past 5 years. That's always been the game that scared me the most. So what do you think, Tennessee fans? Are you happy that you don't have to deal with Nico anymore? Or do you kind of miss him? Do you think the offense kind of will get it turned around this year? Let us know in the comments.
All right. So now we go deep in the heart of Texas. Preseason number 1 in both polls. The most anticipated quarterback season, maybe in history. Is Arch Manning everything he's been hyped up to be? And is Texas going to win the SEC and the national championship in just its second year in the conference?
It looks like they have a good chance. They really do. I mean, even because they open with Iowa State, that's a non-conference game, and then they have absolutely nobody until they play Florida, and then they get, those are a pretty tough stretch. But
their schedule is still nice, though.
It is. I mean, nice.
Playing Ohio State to open the season, it's kind of reminds me of Georgia Clemson a few years ago.
Yeah,
like you can lose it, but it
doesn't really hurt you.
You lose it to the number 1, number 2 team in the country. It doesn't hurt you, especially as long as you're competitive in the game. And then outside of that, they've got 4 ranked teams on their schedule outside of that, which is one of the lower numbers in the conference. Yes, they have to go to Florida, and yes, they have to go to Georgia this year, but they get Texas A&M at home at the end of the year. Oklahoma's that neutral site game, so their schedule is pretty nice. But let's not act stupid and think that they're gonna win because of their schedule. If they're gonna win a national championship, they're gonna win because they live up to the hype and the talent that they have been building over the last few years down there in Austin.
Yeah, because I mean they still have some talent that is awesome that's returning. I mean, just look at the running back position. Travion Wisner, he was 1,000-yard running back last year.
Right, and they get C.J. Baxter back, who was supposed to be the starter. Like, Wisner was like their 3rd string coming into the year last year.
Yeah, and he ended up being great.
Yeah, and Jarrett Gibson played well last year too. So they've got 2 guys who were good for them last year. One who was awesome and one who was pretty good, and then a guy who was supposed to be their starter. So right there, you've already got 3 good running backs, and Arch is much more mobile than Quinn Ewers was. So, and they were an effective running team last year when Quinn Ewers was a statue because he was hurt. I mean, he had bad ankles. Like, if Arch Manning plays within himself, their offense is going to be tough to stop because they're going to be able to run the ball on you, which will set up the play action, which will get these talented receivers that they have like Ryan Wingo open.
Does he live up to the hype? Does Arch Manning live up to the hype?
I guess the question becomes, does the offensive line hold up for him? They got 4 new starters on the offensive line. They lost the best offensive tackle in the country. And I saw the other day, there were some reports out of their scrimmage that the O-line was having trouble with their defense. Now, that could just be coach talk. That could just be whatever. But it could also be that their defensive line is really freaking good.
Yeah. I mean, Texas defense was elite last year. I don't think people realize how good that defense was.
No, and they've got Colin Simmons coming back at edge. PFF picked him as the best defensive player in the SEC this year. And PFF, not perfect, but tries to be a little bit less feely and a little bit more statistical analysis. The guy had 9 sacks, 3 forced turnovers, and a pick last year from the edge. And that's great numbers, and it's probably going to go up. And then at linebacker, they have Anthony Hill. He's probably the best defensive player in the conference. So
Yeah, absolutely loaded. Going to be fun to watch. Does it? Do you think it all comes down to how Arch plays, or is he just
No,
someone that has to not lose games for him?
no, I don't think so. Because Ewers wasn't great last year. Ewers was good at times, but he was bad at times, and they still won. I think a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
I think
but
a lot of the
I'm
attention.
talking about national championship.
No, I don't think so. I think if they are gelling at a team as a team at the end of the year, I think his play will come along. It's kind of like Will Howard, right? Last year at Ohio State, he kind of looked on and off at times, but man, when they got hot at the end of the year,
he was on fire.
He was on fire. He looked fantastic. I think Manning's the same situation. I think he's not going to have to be crazy insane making plays for them to win a lot of the season. But yes, coming down the stretch to win a national championship, he's going to need to be crisp. We'll just see. We'll see. You know, the old question is, why wasn't he starting last year? That'll be answered probably pretty quick, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big question, because there is all the hype with Arch. He's never going to escape that with that last name. But they do have some big games. You know, we mentioned Ohio State, huge opening week, and then November 15th, circled on the calendar. They come to Athens, Georgia.
You know, it's weird to think, and I'm going to talk this more when we talk about Georgia next week, but that November 15th game could potentially be for a spot in the playoff. The loser of that game could potentially miss the playoff. If Texas, let's say they lose to Ohio State week 1, if they have any other losses and they come to Athens with 2 losses.
They do have to play at Florida on October 4th. Right. That's very losable game.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But if they come to Athens with 2 losses, their back's against the wall. That game could be, you know, it could be for a shot in Atlanta, but it could also be for a playoff spot.
Right.
Because unlike Florida and Oklahoma, they don't have the craziness of their schedule. Yes, they have Ohio State, but it's the beginning of the year.
Yeah, all their really big games, with the exception of Florida and Oklahoma, are all spaced out really nice.
So Texas fans, tell us what you think. Is this the year that Arch Manning lives up to the hype and he becomes everything you've expected? Or does he just play well enough and the team wins, and next year is the year that he puts up crazy stats and becomes one of the greatest players in Texas history? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
All right. Staying in the state of Texas. Go from the Longhorns to the Texas A&M Aggies. Mike Elko, second year, had a great first year. He's got a great quarterback returning, and he's really just changed the face or the culture of that program.
Right. It was built around Jimbo Fisher, big money, big players, boldness, and he's kind of brought more of a workman-like attitude, I guess. And I think the big thing for Texas A&M, and that people kind of aren't looking at, is they got 15 starters coming back. One of the highest percentage of returning starters in the league. And I think the key for Texas A&M, and maybe, you know, determination of how much they win is their running game. This is a team that's probably going to rush for 3,000 yards as a team, because they have really good running backs and they have a running quarterback. So you've got Marcel Reed, you've got Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens, and then you've got NC State transfer Kevin Concepcion at receiver. So you've got a star receiver coming in that filled the spot of Noah Thomas. You've got 2 good running backs, and you've got a quarterback. And we know they've got players on defense as well.
Absolutely. The big key for them is Marcel Reed. You know, he had a huge breakout game against LSU last year, and then kind of just became pedestrian after that. So the big question for him is, which Marcel Reed do you get this year? Is it going to be the one we saw against LSU that's uber dynamic, can make all the runs, make all the throws, and just take over a game? Or is it going to be the one that we saw kind of just be pretty average at the end of the season?
Yeah. And I think the key game on Texas A&M's schedule is actually against Notre Dame. Why do I think that's such an important game? Well, one, because Notre Dame is one of these teams that can easily waltz into the playoff because they have it set up nicely. They're not in the conference. 10-2 is going to get them into the playoff every year. So every chance that they have against SEC or somebody else, if they lose a game, that could potentially knock them out of a playoff spot, which opens up another spot in the SEC. Texas A&M, outside of that game, is one of these teams. They have 4 ranked teams, but Texas is at the end of the year. It's the last game of the season. So if they can somehow go through the rest of their schedule and get to that Texas game with only 1 loss, and they say they lose to Texas, but you got to win over Notre Dame in there, they're going to be set up nice to be in the playoffs. So I think that's an important resume builder, and I think it's important for the SEC as a whole that they lose that Texas A&M wins that game and Notre Dame loses. It could potentially decide whether or not there's another playoff spot for the SEC or the Big Ten versus a spot that's going to go to Notre Dame.
Yeah, that is a huge game. Another huge game. I guess two really, Florida and LSU. Lucky for them, they get Florida at home, so they don't have to go to the swamp for that. But they do have to go to LSU, to Baton Rouge, and then they follow that up with Missouri and South Carolina. So the back end of their schedule's pretty tough. Anything else about Texas A&M?
I don't think so.
How much of a cult are they? Brandon Walker's always calling them a cult.
I mean, they're definitely different. Let's just say that.
Let us know. Are you looking forward to Marcel Reed this year? What do you think he's going to produce this year? Let us know in the comments. And then there was the Vanderbilt Commodores, the pride of Nashville, the fighting Pavias.
Let's talk about Diego Pavia, the guy who fought the law, and he won.
He did.
He lobbied the NCAA and said his JUCO years or whatever shouldn't count towards his eligibility, and hot damn, he won. And lots of other people have tried and they failed. So Diego Pavia is back for another year, off a great year at Vanderbilt. Statistically, his completion percentage wasn't great, but so what? 2,200 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, only 4 picks, but also 800 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns. That's a weapon, man. Yeah. That's a weapon at quarterback. And he's got arguably the best tight end in the conference coming back as a safety valve, Eli Stowers. So new offensive line, 4 new starters. Like I said, they pulled the biggest upset of the year last year, beating Alabama. They beat a good Georgia Tech team in their bowl game. They almost beat Texas. It was a magical year for Vanderbilt, but can they keep it up? History tells us that every so often Vanderbilt steps up and has a good year, and then they go back to being Vanderbilt. What do you think, bro?
Yeah, well, in this particular case, the times that we've seen Vanderbilt sustain any type of success, they've had a quarterback there for a couple of years. Think back to Jay Cutler. Now, Pavia's no Jay Cutler.
I don't know. He may be a better quarterback, a better college quarterback than Jay Cutler was.
Yeah, because he can run a lot more, and that's more important than in college for sure. And Pavia's got he's got a competitive streak, to put it nicely.
He's got all of the moxie.
All the moxie. All the Moxley.
Well, here's something else to consider about Vanderbilt this year. So for the last few years, Clark Lee has ran his defense. He is a defensive-minded coach. This year, he's decided to step away, and he brought in a defensive coordinator. He brought in Steve Gregory, who's a former NFL safeties coach, to run the defense. Now, Vanderbilt wasn't horrible on defense last year. They were 49th in the country, but by SEC standards, that was probably near the bottom of the league. if their defense improves and you have a star quarterback, maybe some of these games last year that were close but not wins or upsets, maybe those become wins. They've got Virginia Tech out of conference. They've got Georgia State. They should win that. In conference, I mean, yeah, they've got South Carolina, Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee and Texas. So they've got 5 ranked teams in conference, just like everybody else. We'll see what happens, but they get to the end of the year. That Tennessee game could be one that's interesting.
That is a brutal schedule because all their really big games are on the road. At South Carolina, at Alabama. They get LSU.
Yeah, the only one they get at home is LSU.
Yeah, but at Texas, at Tennessee. I mean, I feel bad for them.
Yeah. So, Vanderbilt fans, what do you think? Is your man Diego Pavia going to lead you to a bowl game for the second straight year? Let us know in the comments below.
All right, on to predictions. Getting ready to wrap this up. So, what do you see as some of the big things happening in the SEC this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have an upper echelon. I think everybody's talked about Texas, Bama, Georgia, LSU as your most likely national title contenders, conference title contenders. And I see that. Florida's kind of a wild card in there because they do play LSU, they do play Texas, they do play Georgia. So the health of DJ Lagway, if their offense turns into what it could be, they could throw a wrench in all that. Tennessee was a playoff team last year, as we talked about. Their schedule sets up nice, so maybe they end up near the top. I don't know. It's an interesting year. The conference is really strong.
It is. It's super deep for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think Kentucky and Mississippi State are entrenched at the bottom, but outside of that, and you kind of got that top group, but that middle section, those middle 10 teams, I could see them all finishing in any number of orders. And like I said, a couple of those top ones could even jump up into that top group. So
yep, absolutely. So Texas favored to win the SEC. You're going to have Georgia and Alabama right there, and then it's a huge scrum of really, really good teams.
Yeah. And I ran it through old college football, EA Sports. Had some really interesting results when I ran it through that. Georgia went 12-0, and they played Texas A&M, who went 8-4 in the conference championship game. So that's interesting. Yeah, it was a weird simulation. Everybody else in the league went 8-4, 9-3, and Georgia went 12-0. So that's interesting. And we'll talk next week when we talk about our Georgia preview and our national or our college football playoff preview, kind of what happened there. But I'll tell you, it's very surprising. So yeah, like you said, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, those are your favorites. LSU there too. Your offensive player of the year, I'm thinking Lenora Sellers. He's got the opportunity. He's got the pedigree. Defensive player of the year,
And
Anthony Hill.
It's either going to be him, Arch Manning, or DJ Lagway.
Or Lagway, yeah. So it'll be a fun year in the SEC. And next week, we will do our full preview of Georgia. We'll go through the entire Georgia schedule. We'll give our prediction on the record. And then we will also give our predictions for the college football playoff. So what teams we think are going to come from all the leagues and how we think that's going to shake out. And then the next week, we are into season. So be on the lookout. We had to delay the last couple of videos in our 50 greatest players videos. Those will be out over the next few days. So keep on the lookout for that. But until next time, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.